Today, it's our pleasure to welcome Mr. Eddy Choueiry as our featured guest, who will be sharing some interesting details on his discoveries when it comes to the richness of our Lebanese heritage. Eddy began teaching the art of photography after completing his studies in psychology and philosophy. In addition to his passionate photography skills, he has authored a total of 9 remarkable books on the different aspects of the Lebanese heritage. Through this talk, Eddy will touch briefly on the books he has compiled between the years of 2011 and 2019, with a focus on his books Liban sur Réel, a book revealing the story and the history of the railways in Lebanon. As an active member of Train, a Lebanese NGO founded in 2010, advocating for Lebanese railway rehabilitation and railway heritage preservation, Eddy's enthusiasm will take you back to your roots, our Lebanese identity. Before I hand over the floor to Eddy, I'd just like to mention 2 things. The first is, over the duration of the call, if anyone does have any questions, we encourage you to send them to the WLCU Q&A in the chat. The last 15 minutes of the call, we will dedicate to Eddy answering all your questions. And as well, we would just like to shed some light on a WLCU initiative that's currently taking place called Feed the Hungry. It's an initiative to help alleviate hunger in Lebanon to families by the donation of food care packages. The link will also be sent in the chat, so if anyone is interested in wanting to support, please take a check. And now, without further ado, I will pass the floor to Eddy. Thank you.
Hey. Hello, everybody. I'm so honored and so pleased to be with you, and this is so interesting. I think of a profile of our heritage. It was, for me, it was a discovery. So let's start share with you some of the books. Just the cover. Here we go. Okay. So my first book, it was over the vegetal heritage. So it was about one of the biggest reserve in the Middle East. It covers from 7 to 10% of the perimeter of Lebanon. As you know, our national flag, we had a cedar. So the cedar is so just like an icon and a symbol of Lebanon. So and you know that Lebanon is so famous by the green. I hope we're going to stand still, because everybody is destroying all the forests and trees. So that's the first one. The second that we're going to discuss today, it's over our industrial heritage. And I spent over 15 years to discover this heritage. This is the only book over the railways in Lebanon. It was I published the first one in 2012, and then a second edition 2013, and now it was supposed to, before the Revolution of October, prepare a third edition to enlarge it a little bit. The third one in 2013, I made this book, The Vestige of Sulfur, because in Sulfur, you know, we got this one of the biggest and the only casino in the Middle East during the 19th century. And Amin Rehani, you know, Amin Rehani is a friend of Gibran Khalil, and he was in the United States, and he came back to Lebanon in 1910 to rediscover his hometown. And he described this hotel, and so interesting because this hotel, it was a little bit a place to retell the history of Lebanon through the different personalities that visit this hotel. One of my very self book, Maison Traditionnelle, the Lebanese traditional houses. But what is really because in Lebanon you can find a lot of books made by architects or other about the traditional houses. But this book, this particular one, it's shed a light over the Lebanese villages, and that was so interesting. And then I discovered the relationship between the villages of Lebanon and our identity. So if you ask any Lebanese, the first thing after مرحبا كيفك يعطيك العافية, the first thing that one Lebanese asked to another, where are you from? And his back thought he was asking from which village you are. So most of the people, when they ask me while I'm preparing this book, where are you from? I said from Beirut. Everybody's telling me nobody is from Beirut. You are originally from a village. That's so interesting. So this book is about the different typology of the Lebanese traditional houses and the villages, and it's been written by these two. Not written. It's been helped by two architects. Friedrich Ragat, he's Austrian. He teaches in the AUB, and Jacques Ligibeller, also one of the first architects who made a book about the typology, different typology of Lebanon. So last week I made a conference over this book. It's also the only book about the maritime heritage, because we are Phoenician, but unfortunately we don't have any book if you want to know much more about our heritage, maritime heritage. So the stories that tell about the fishermen and so on. It was really interesting. They like it a lot. I was not surprised, because I know most of Lebanese, they don't know about their maritime heritage. So this book holds a story about the mermaid, about the fisherman tales, about the different harbor, Phoenician harbor, before and after, the discovery of the Phoenician harbor in Byblos, for example. There are a lot of rich stories. Now, one of my latest book, it was a tribute to my grandmother. This book, it was supposed to be the first one, but my editor, he told me that we need to postpone it a little bit. This is why in Arabic you see Beit Sitte, the house of the home of my grandmother. This one is in 4 chapters. The first chapter, it represents nature, just Lebanon. One of my best photo shoot that I made of Lebanon without any trace of Lebanese. And the second chapter, it was how the Lebanese traditional houses are drawn in nature, in villages. Now the third one, as you can see here in the background, the third chapter, it was how the Lebanese houses, they are drawn in cement. And at last but not least, how Beirut as a start, and it's going to start to spread to whole Lebanon. All the traditional Lebanese houses, they start to disappear. By the way, unfortunately, this house that I took, this photo that I took in 2017, it disappeared. It had been destroyed. Now a new building is being up there. Under print, this one, I'm so proud of it. It's about, as we said in French, la crème, about the history of the Lebanese houses through, as you can see here, Friedrich Ragat, that I talked to you about from a second. This book, it tell you about the history of the Lebanese houses through period. So with Friedrich Ragat, this architect, I'm going to tell you the history of your different typology of the Lebanese houses during the Ottoman period, so 400 years, let's say, and then the French period, during the French Mandate, the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, and then the modern period after the independence until the beginning of the civil war in Lebanon. In fact, it was an international war, a war in Lebanon. But anyway, and then the war period, and then after the post-war period. So it was so interesting to see in one book. If you are one of you are architect, you will enjoy this book, because you see in one book in 272 pages the evolution of and what is left of our Lebanese houses. Under print also, the revolution and Corona stopped everything. This one, I had prepared it for the Ministry of Tourism, because most of my work is being promoted by 2 ministries in Lebanon, the Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Tourism. This one is so interesting because it tell the Lebanese first and then the foreigners or the Lebanese diaspora about the unforgotten villages and the importance of the villages in Lebanon. I think I made my 50 minutes. So I'm so now I'm going to show you to start with our book in our our industrial heritage, the train. I'm going to I sent you already on the chat a link that you can go and see it, see it as you please, and you can share it, of course. This one I prepared it in 2013 in Paris. I projected for the first time in Paris when I signed my book, this one. And I prepared this projection, this small slideshow that you can see right away. So explain a little bit the different kind of trains, the different lines, and the different train stations. And at the end, I got a surprise for you that you're going to see it right away. 45 minutes. I'm going to really talk about it later, but just to see it. Okay. So I hope you will like it. Thumbs up if you like it. Okay. Okay. So it was a little bit rush, around 3 minutes, but don't worry, I'm gonna explain everything. So as a start, let me show you the screen. I condensed a little bit the book that I made in 2012. Voilà. So this is the first page. And here we got the guichet when I prefer to put this photo. So you had to pay at the guichet to go on the train. So I had to, I prefer to put this, this small photo at the first page of my book. I found, of course, my book is between yesterday and today, the archive, and the 15 years that I spent. Why 15 years? Because most of the stations have been occupied by the Syrian army. We can go to the south because the Israeli army are occupied the south of Lebanon. So it was a little bit chaotic. So this is why it took me a lot of time. So this photo is from the archive postcard that I found is so beautiful. I depart from Beirut. And I'm going to start to have you a small brief about the history of the railways in Lebanon through this card. This is map. And here's the map. Voila. So I think most of you, they know Lebanon. We got the Mediterranean Sea here. Up we got Syria, on the south we got Palestine, and this is Beirut in the middle. So the first line, we are talking now, we are in the end of the 19th century, during the Ottoman, it means the Turkish period. As most of you know, the Ottoman, and most of your, if you are from the Lebanese diaspora, most of your grandfathers, they left this country during this period, this very sad period of the Ottoman Turkish occupation of Lebanon for 420 years. Anyway, so the first line, it will be made between Beirut and Damascus. So it starts from the coast and go up in the mountain. Then it go down to the cross through Zabadani and Serghaya, this small village between the Lebanese and the Syrian border, and to go down to Damascus. The importance of this line is just to make an open from Damascus, because Damascus in Syria, only on the north of it, you can see it, it's open to the Mediterranean Sea. But Damascus as a capital, and when we say Damascus, we said Bilad al-Sham, you know, it's so important. Even Lebanon, it was a part of Syria. For example, most of you, they will be surprised. Khalil Gibran, for example, he used to sign in his first letters as the Syrian prince. So, of course, there is Lebanon. It's been the word Lebanon. It's been mentioned even in the Bible. But when we said Lebanon, it was the Mount Lebanon. You see this one in the center here, this part. Anyway, so the importance of why the Ottoman period, the Ottoman Sultanate, they allow the French to make this, because they don't have money at the time. And there is a race between the French that they've been in this area and the British that they've been in Haifa, in Palestine, of course. At the time, there is a race. Which one of them who gonna make this exit, this overture from Damascus to the Mediterranean Sea. And especially Damascus, you know, in Damascus, it was the hub for all the trades and cereals and the Tariq al-Harir, the Silk Road from China. So it was really a hub. And this is why the French, they won this race. And they traced this line, this railway from Beirut to Damascus the opening, it was in 1895. So this is the first line. The second line, it was a branch. It was happened in at the beginning of the 20th century between Rayaq. Yusuf, he visited this. I hope if you, by chance, you will come back to Lebanon, please call me and we will go together to discover these different, this old line. So the second one, it's been inaugurated in 1904. It's come from Rayaq to Baalbek. You know, everybody had heard to Baalbek, to Ras Baalbek, to Damascus, to Aleppo, and Homs, and then Aleppo. Of course, when we said train, you said trade. And this is the importance of the railways. And then we got the third one. It's so interesting here. In 1911, it goes from Tripoli to Homs, of course, and from Homs to Aleppo. And at last but not least, you discover that the Australian army during the Second World War, as the Commonwealth, of course, they attack from Haifa to liberate Lebanon from the Vichy. You know, the French Vichy, it was called with the Nazi. So in 1941, they start in 5 p.m. the attack against the French Vichy army, and they liberate Lebanon. And just right after it, you can see, if you want to discover a little bit this event, you go to Sydney War Memorial. You type on Google Sydney War Memorial Lebanon film railway, and you can see 4 black and white, just like Charlie Chaplin one, without any sound. You can see the engineers try to, in 4 phases, try to dress this line between Haifa and Tripoli. But it was made in 2 parts. The Australian army, they made this line between this part between Beirut and Tripoli, and it's been filmed and documented. Unfortunately, the line between this branch between Beirut and Haifa, it was made by the New Zealand army as a Commonwealth, of course, but we don't have any just 1 or 2 photos, just it. So this is the 4th line. So I rebrief the first one in the end of the 19th century, during the Ottoman period. The French, Henri Lecomte de Pertuis, he had this auction to he made the auction to have this line, to dress this line between Beirut and Damascus. In 1904, there is a company, it's called DHP, Damas Hama et Prolongement. They made this line from Rayaq, also during the Ottoman period, from Rayaq, of course, into Baalbek, and then to Homs, from Homs to Aleppo. Aleppo, it was so interesting as Homs. And then the third one, also just 3 years before the First World War, from Tripoli to Homs, and from Homs to Aleppo. At last but not least, why I say not least, but you're going to discover lately we are facing the same race. Who's going to retrace the railway to put the train in Lebanon? I'm going to over my speech in this one. Anyway, so the last one, 1941, as you saw in the movie, it was being inaugurated during the Lebanese president, Alfred Naqash, at the Nahr al-Kalb. It was happened, everything, this inauguration, it happened in Nahr al-Kalb. from Haifa to Tripoli. So now we go back to my book. Screen. Okay, there we go. So this photo, it's been taken in 1895. It was during the inauguration of the line. This one is in Damascus. Here you can see one of my best photo. I like it a lot. You see the big rails. Now here the DHP. DHP Damas, الشام, Hama, توابعها, and le prolongement. And now up here you see the seagull of the logo of the Lebanese railways after it. The other one, these two has been stolen, unfortunately, and I was so lucky that I started a little bit earlier to take some photos. It happens, let's say, during 2002, I start to do this, or 2000, or 99, best 99. I started 99. Anyway, this plaque over here, it of course now you recognize it, the date of the inauguration of the railways. It was this stone. It was on the top of the tunnel that the train across in Dahr al-Baydar. This one, it's been made by the French. You can see it in every station from Beirut till Damascus. Now, I told you I will retell you about the story about this train, and it's not the steam that's coming out. It's a cloud. So I put my tripod and I wait around 45 minutes until I shoot the proper way, the proper cloud, that it's look like the train is back on track. And now I ask you to take a quick look to this guy here. This one was taken. This photo has been taken in '75, just before the war in Lebanon, because this guy he had most of the stories that I collected from this guy, and he's still alive. You're gonna see it at the end of this show. As you can see that, let's start by the trains. So at the beginning of the Ottoman period, we got several kinds of trains. The first one, it was Swiss, several kinds of Swiss train. And this icon here, you can see this Société Suisse pour la construction of locomotives. The Swiss Société for the train and locomotive construction. We can see this on the border inside the Swiss train. This another one. It is a French one, but I like it a lot. Just like before, when it was functional, you can see people, but now because it was deserted, you can see the plants. And this is why there is a French say that quand la nature reprend ses droits, when nature regains his rights. Oh, it's right. This one, this beautiful photo is I took it in Tripoli. Now we can see a different kind of locomotive in Tripoli. This one here, it's a German. This one, he traveled all over the world. Why? Because during the First World War, when the German they lose the war, the French they had all the trains from Germany, and they put it in function on the north of France. And then when they needed after the inauguration of the line between Beirut and Damascus, they brought it to Lebanon, and they start to be functional on this line between Beirut and Tripoli. And of course, sometimes between Beirut and Damascus. But basically, it was because it wasn't a narrow gauge, the standard line. And then the Lebanese in Riyadh, they changed the chimney out here. And the funny story is when the German engineers from the railways, the German railways, they came to Lebanon to see, because they heard that one of their locomotives, now they still exist in Lebanon. They came here and they got the photo, but they got the old photo. So when they see it, they didn't recognize their own train, because the Lebanese, they changed it from steam train to diesel. And this is why we had to change the chimney, because we changed it from steam train to from coal to diesel. And here, one of my discoveries that in 1960, the USA, the American people, they grant Lebanon by 4 locomotives, General Motors. This is one of them, and this one is being functional. It's been functional. Now it's a prison. Unfortunately, the trains, they're still there, safe and sound, with the prisoners. So, and the back here, you're going to discover the Polish train. We're going to see it in a bit. So here you can see this logo of the United States of America, the USA. And now we got a auto rail. This one is so fantastic. It used to work on itself. It's an auto rail. It's German. But after the war, it stopped. And this is why I told you at the end of my movie, we had a surprise, because this German rail locomotive, when this auto rail is stopped, they drag it as a passenger wagon. And when I was 3 years ago, when I was in Austria, I saw my book to one of the cheminots, one of the railway workers. He told me, don't ever show the German of this photo, because it's just like an insult. That's a Polish train is dragging a German auto rail. You know how the Germans are so proud of their fabrication, and they are right. It's so interesting. I have this privilege to go during the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. This train, it's been functional in 91, as you can see here, 91. It goes from Beirut to Tripoli. This is another footage of this Polish train. It's a diesel, of course. Now you can see different rails. Now you can see it's a narrow gauge. This line is the old line that during the Ottoman period. So you got the rack rail, what we call the rack rail, or akrimayer. So inside, it's like a gear, just like a gear on your car. The same on this train. Inside the train, you got this. It goes from this. It doesn't allow the when you go up, it's forbidden the train to slide back. So just like a brake, at the same time, it's just like a rack rail. Now we got not the narrow gauge, the normal one, let's say. As you can see, you don't have the rack in the middle of it. This one is in the line between Tripoli and Beirut, or Tripoli and Haifa. As you can see here, it's a surprise. We have it's written Al-Hijaz. Al-Hijaz, it's of course it's in Saudi Arabia. So after the war in Lebanon, this wagon is being stuck in Riyadh. So it's supposed to be in Saudi Arabia, because in the beginning of the 20th century, the Ottoman, they allow to make a line between Damascus and Saudi Arabia for the pilgrimage, the Hajj, pelerinage. So it took them a lot of time. So in one day, in 48 hours, they can cross from Damascus to reach Saudi Arabia for the pilgrimage and to go back much safely. These one are taken in Riyadh. This is the Majesty, the Swiss old train in Jamhur, I believe this one. It's around 90 tons of steel. Huh? It's terrific, really terrific. I had the privilege to go to Austria and to ride in two old trains, not all as this one, but I want to smell the steam train, and it's terrific. Really, the experience is great. The sound, the whistle, and everything is brilliant. Now, in these two photos, they are so interesting about the history of the railways. Why? Because you can see two things here. You can see the chariot here, and the parallel, you can see this in Sulfur, okay? And you see the railways. To make the long story short, it's a long story, but to make it short, as I told you that the French had this had the authorization to make this line between Beirut and Tripoli. Comte de Pertuis, he was before he had authorization to make this railway. He had before in 1856 the authorization to make a route, a way. Now it's a highway. To make a link between Beirut and Damascus, but with chariot, because you need 2 days before to make it on a horse, let's say. With a chariot, you need 48 hours. With a train, you need 9 hours. So you can see. So the chariot here, it came to replace the train. It came to replace the chariot. This line between Beirut and Tripoli. Is these two old archive postcards? They are so interesting, so significant to the history of the history of the railways in Lebanon. And what's so funny about this one? It is still. Everyone now, when we go, let's say if you are going from Beirut to Baalbek, so the taxi had to stop in Shtura. Why? Because it seems that this tradition, it happens during this chariot road, and at the time they used to stop to make a rest in Shtura. And we still keeping these traditions. There are a lot of restaurants and so on that they stop in Shtura. Okay, so here the different station from Beirut to Damascus. We go from the harbor. We're going to see it later. And this one of the famous Swiss train with the you can see the rack that for this one here is over there. Huh? You can see it's this place is over here. So this engine here don't allow the train to slide back when it's go up. So now this wonderful two archive postcard. The first station, the station 0 at the harbor. So you can see the lines here. You can see the station, the old station here. The first station 0 from the harbor, and then we go, and of course we got the tram. Go the Maram Khalil station. One of you who visited the Maram Khalil station, and as you can see, the chariot now. They used to pick the passengers here to take them from Maram Khalil on the chariot to Damascus. Now they bring the people from everywhere to the train station, and the train they took over to take them from Beirut to Damascus. You see the evolution. And this photo is so interesting because the only photo that we got from the Australian Sydney War Memorial, we can see the train at the harbor. It's been towed by the Australian Army during their presence in Lebanon in after the Second World War. Different aspect and the angles from the Maram Khaila station. But what's so important about this photo, you can see the old steam train track, and then they adapt to have the standard one. You see, so in this 3 lines, you can between these two, 1 and 1.0, meter. This one for the rack train, the steam train, and if you add this one, so the normal train during the Second World War, the standard rail, it could walk on between this one and this one. The second, here I'm gonna make it fast because the stations are copy paste. It's the same architecture. We go from Hadad, and also to Ba'abda. This wonderful. I believe you will like this one because you can see Ba'abda at the end of the 19th century. At the station here, and also the chariot, of course, in Jamhur. And this one is still stand up in Araya, in Alay, Hamdoun, and then Sofar. I've got this wonderful photo in Sofar during the winter. And now after Sofar, go from this tunnel in Dahr al-Baydar. This is the entrance, is the exit, to pass by a small station up here. If you go to the Bekaa, you remember these tunnels, the snow sheds. And here we go, we see the train going in one of the tunnels. In 2004, as it recalled here, I made this trip on feet between, it took me about 3 hours to pass by on feet to cover all this line, this train. And then after I make my book, I went up to rediscover it, and I was surprised. All the line being stalled. All this line is being stalled. I didn't see it anymore. Now we go to Marejet. As you can see, it's a copy paste. It's the same architecture. Then to Saad Nail, the importance of Saad Nail is that the mayor of Saad Nail, he came back from the States, and he saw and he know the importance. He by chance he had one of my book, especially the railways, and he decided to restore it. And this when they start the restoration, and here at the end. And I believe this one when Yusuf he was with us in this train trip here in Saad Nail. Unfortunately, we have a wonderful station in Zahle, but they destroyed it to make an hospital. Unfortunately, we don't have this wonderful station. It wasn't only a station, but a station and a hotel. Now we go to Raya. Raya, it's very important because it was the first and the biggest atelier to fix the stations, the locomotives in the Middle East at the time. This is a small part of it, okay? Now you can see the old station in Rayak, the station and hotel. Inside the atelier, the work, but in the present time, of course. I'm going to show you an archive photo from my friend Ilyas Malouf about how it was before. So here at the entrance, you can see the cheminot, the workers, they are dancing together. And now they are inside, huh? You see, this part here, it's here. Sorry. It's here, right here. It's been destroyed. I like this one. Always, when the humans leave the place, the nature took over. This is one of the atelier when you can fix the garage, huh? You can fix the trains, 2 to 4. Here, I believe we got 6 trains from here to here. It's still there. You can visit them. One of my best photos. We don't have passengers because this is wagon for passengers. Now the passengers, they are trees and they are waiting. to take them to Damascus from Riyadh, for example. I like it a lot, this one. The last station between Lebanon and Syria, it was Yahfufa. I went there. It's really a very interesting station. And then I just as a demonstration, right after Yahfufa, right after this one, we got Serghaya and Zabadani. As you can see, this now we are in Syria. Huh? So it's the same. It's the same because the French, they made the same typical station architectural-wise on all over this line. And then now we are on this link that I told you that we made from Riyadh to crossing to Baalbek, and then to Homs and Aleppo. This one is so interesting because you can see the rail and a backyard, in the background, sorry, you can see the temple of Jupiter and the Bacchus and Baalbek temples in the background. Now Labwe, and then this one, Ras al Baalbek, the last station, I believe, before we cross the Syrian border toward Homs. Now, only book, I told you this, my book is the only book that you can see now in market if you need anything about, to tell you about photo footage, a little bit of history about the railway. But before, we had this Elitaire after Riyadh. He's CEO, let's say, and he read the only book, Chemin de Fer, the railway between Syria and Lebanon in 1944. It's so interesting, so because it's a témoignage, it witnessed a little bit in much of the everything about the railways in Lebanon during the Ottoman period and French period. This one is one of the auction during the Ottoman. Société Ottomane de Chemin de Fer de Mashama. This is Elitaire over here. This is the French representative here. This is another French from the railways, from the French railways, I believe. Now, 1942, we got this wonderful footage of the Australian trying to build the line, as I told you, from Beirut to Tripoli, and then the New Zealand army from Beirut to Haifa in Palestine. But the photos are good, but I was telling you that we are in 1942, 1941, 1942. You can see here the Australian Army, the Commonwealth. They are trying to build this line between Beirut and Tripoli, and the New Zealand, they build it, they trace it from Beirut to Haifa. And last year, I had the authorization from the Ministry of Defense to visit the last line, the border between us, the south of Lebanon, and Naura and occupied Palestine. So just to cover this tunnel, the last tunnel, that if you cross this tunnel and on the other side, you will be in the occupied Palestine. And this one. These are the two footage, the only two footage that we got for the New Zealand footage of it. Now, inside of, from Beirut to the south, these are the only what is left. It's not so rich. In the Moor, for example, this one, about the oil wagons and gas wagons they left in Jiyeh. This one in Saida. This bridge is being destroyed by the Israeli army in 1982, and several times it was a train bridge. Now, these markers are so interesting. It tells the driver, the train driver, how long is far from, for example, here 215 kilometers from Haifa, and so on. Now, here we are on Nahr al-Kalb, a bridge near Byblos, and you can see the logo of the Australian Army. The biggest tunnel, the train tunnel in Lebanon, in Shikka, Yeah, okay. Uh, and we got the date, huh, on the top of the tunnel. That's coming out. This old archive photo is in Byblos in Jbeil. As you can see, it's completely different. It's not so beautiful as the French station at the time. It's just a small cube with a cement and some rocks, and that's it. Because, you know, in 1 year, the Australian, they made this line from Beirut to Tripoli. And they are so in rush. Here, the different logos of the British Commonwealth or the Australian Army military. What we discover on this bridge is being brought from London, because the date, as you can see here, is 1895. So as now you can recognize that in 1895 it's the Ottoman period, and this line, this bridge, doesn't exist at the time. So we understand, we get it, that because they are so in rush to make this line, to make this link, this coastal link between Palestine and Syria, crossing Lebanon, of course. So they drag this this bridge from London to Mahamiltain, and there are a lot of them. Now the Tripoli during the Ottoman period, I'm ending up with this one. At the Ottoman period, Tripoli, it was the terminal, huh? And then this is why you can understand that the Australian, they make this link between on the coastal link between Beirut and Tripoli. Unfortunately, when I took this one, it was a stand up, but during a storm, the facade of the building of the station has been destroyed. So quickly, Ron Zeal and John Knowles, one of them is American, the other one is Australian. They give us a lot of footage of the old footage during the 70s, the 60s of the railways. And at last but not least, when I make the signature of my book, we invite all the what is left of the old cheminot, the old drivers and workers in the station. And here, after they met, after 40 years, it was, for us, it was, for me, it was an honor and a big joy to regather the old friends together back. And we give them as a present a copy of this book, of the train book. Here we got the Australian ambassador, Elias Malouf, the founder of Train. And of course, that's me. At last but not least, if you recall that I told you that this guy had a story, this is the same guy that you can see on the cover of my book. So I searched him and I found him, and I put him on the same position of this one here. As you can see, this is him. And that's it. I hope you enjoy it. I try to make to be brief as much as I can.
Thank you,
if you
Eddy.
had any question, I'll be so glad to.
Yes. So Yusuf, so WLCU Q&A will be sharing the questions with you, and if you're able to answer them, we'd be more than happy to hear. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. And thank you very much, Eddy. I have some questions. So I go with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It's did the different trains from Germany, France, US, and other work in the same rails? And it says, I understand they might have different measures.
All right. The first period, autumn period, it was this line over here. Let me reshare the this photo because it's interesting. This line here, it was a narrow gauge. So you got the French Kyle, the name of the train, it was Kyle, and the Swiss. Then in this line here, we got the German one. Because it's not the narrow gauge, it's not 105, It's 125 or 115, I believe, the standard gauge. It's the same from Tripoli to Homs, and the same from Haifa to Tripoli. So the only exception that we got for the narrow gauge for the SEAM train, it was the Swiss train, and on this line between Beirut and Damascus.
Thank you. Other one says, of course, during the Thawra or revolution, it isn't a thought. But was there ever a time your NGO train had hoped to revive any train lines?
Exactly. Since the 80s, let's say, our association, our NGO try in different occasions to try to reput the train back on track in Lebanon. But the problem is that the easiest one is the coastal one. I told you that during the Ottoman period, there is a race between the French and the British. Now, before the Thawra, of course, there is a lot of competitors of this race to have to restore this line. The Chinese, for example, they came and they asked to restore the line between Tripoli and Beirut. It's so strategic because once you connect these two big harbors, Beirut and Tripoli, and then by rail you can link Tripoli to the north of to Ladi'iyeh in the north of Syria, and then you are so linked directly to the Silk Road till China. So yes, there is a lot of proposals. We met a lot of people. We went to France because historically the French they build this line. We ask and we try if they can came back. We had a lot of proposals, but we don't have anything yet. One of the major updates, it was this proposal that we made to make this link between Beirut and Damascus, but crossing the mountain, a big tunnel crossing the mountain. It's a big project, of course. The Chinese want to make this big project, but now after not only after the Thawra, we got much layers of problems. First, we got the Thawra, and then you got the economical problem, and then you got Corona, and then, at last but not least, the international economical crisis. So I think we should wait a little bit more to see it back on track, the train.
Other question says, what were the main factors for the railways being abandoned?
The war, of course. The war in '75. Everything is being stopped. Most of the stations has been occupied by a series of much of armies, Israeli, Syrian, Lebanese, militia, and much. The big catastrophe it was they stole everything from the stations. And especially from the old one, the coastal one. As you can see, it was the station. It was just a cube of cement. That's it. There's nothing inside of it. The richness of architecture, it was on this old line of the 19th century. Unfortunately, most of them being sold.
Okay, so in the same line, I have a personal question, which is, during the time that it actually worked, how do they manage to finish the lines and to have them work if there was always war or problems in Lebanon? I mean, was there a long period that they managed to construct them and put them to work, or how was it possible?
When it started, as I told you, it was during during the last let's say 20 to 30 years of the Ottoman period. We are talking about 1894. The Ottoman they left the country in after the First World War. So the purpose, we should mention that the Lebanese, they didn't build any line. All the project, it was between big countries, between at the beginning between the French and the Sultanate of the Ottomans, and then let's say the Australian, for a military purpose, they make this this link between Haifa and Tripoli. But after the independence, the government of Lebanon, they had in charge from the DHP most of the auctions, most the rights of the railways, and he's still functional. Let's say from our independence in the mid 40s until let's say for 30 years, let's say until then. But the war came and everything's been stopped. But we use it around 30 years after the independence of Lebanon.
Right. And I have one last question, which is
Sure.
regarding your books. Where can we purchase your books? Are they available on Amazon?
In Amazon, they used to have one about the sea, Liban-sur-Mer, Lebanon by the sea, but all of them they've been sold out. The rest of them they are here with me on Amazon. No, not yet.
Okay.
But you know, we need now. We are upside down. We need to ask my editor to report in Amazon some copies. But now, no, on Amazon they are not available.
So for the ones interested in buying your books,
Unless,
could we contact you, and then you send them, or how would it work?
The better way is to come to Lebanon.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome. Unless I've been invited to Paris or whatever, because during every year I make a conference just like this one in Paris in different aspects of the Lebanese heritage or architecture, whatever. And I do the signing. I bring my books with me to the Lebanese diaspora in Paris, in Italy, lately in Jordan. With Suraya Aboud, we have my dear friend. We have a common project. I hope we can make it to Spain to make a project and make signature of my book, or even in America or Canada. So I'll be so glad to bring my books over there. I hope so. I'm going to cross my fingers.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Me too. Thank you very much, Eddy. It was amazing.
It was a pleasure to be with you guys.
Thank you, Eddy.
Thank you.
We appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us today. And happy Mother's Day to everyone's mothers. And also, we'll share Eddy's social media platforms through the chat. So if anyone's interested to take a further look into his content, of course, it's there for your looking. But I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your Sunday. And
likewise.
Once again, Eddy from the organization.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Mr. Vrali. See you guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.